Okay, I put this up on Google Drive. These are some requirements and specifications for semester project. I really do not recommend waiting until the day before to start, as you will get into a lot. Okay. One map per crew. You're responsible to look at the subdivision and land development ordinance and zoning ordinance. There are dimensional things in there that you're going to need to be aware of. All right. Can you have a reverse curve? I know it's Friday. I know it's Lehigh Lafayette weekend. Can you have a reverse curve? You need to have a tangent in between it. How long does that tangent need to be? It's in the ordinance. Look it up. Okay. And when you tie two roads together, like if this is an existing road and my road wants to tie into it, can I have the curve end right at the road? What do we think? No, we need to have a tangent distance. Okay. There needs to be a straight section from center to PC. Then you can have a curve. That distance is spelled out in the ordinance. So when I say your design has to comply with the ordinance, you need to read the ordinance and make sure you're catching these things. That sound fair? You're reading the block design standard section and street design standard section in the Saldo. That's where that information is. Okay. All the videos where I'm showing techniques and little tips and tricks, all those will be up on YouTube. Okay. Requirements. You gotta adhere to zoning and subdivision and land development ordinance. You're gonna upload the CAD file, you're gonna upload a PDF file. Okay. To Google Drive. The location is listed below. Some people didn't upload a PDF file once. Okay. The drawing must be one of the 3 standard sizes. Again, some groups didn't really follow. Some groups really didn't follow using the whole sheet. Like they had their survey, but it was like a small little thing off to the side, or it was like not using the whole sheet. You should use the whole available sheet space. There's my other crew. You missed it. We did engineering origami. We learned how to fold the drawing sheet. Somebody else will show you. You can do it later. Don't worry about it for now. The drawing has to be on a title block. It has to be to scale. Okay. I'm giving you a little shortcut freebie on this, and I'll talk about it. All the text should be clear and legible. Okay. You need to have a north arrow and a legend. Okay. Your design should balance the conflicting interests of, yes, the design requirements for the municipality, but also some of the stuff that we looked at with the PABMP manual, as well as the code of ethics as it relates to sustainability, and your client's desire to have the maximum number of units possible. So you see how that's a balancing act. That's kind of up to you to work your way through those weeds to get to something that you would feel proud of. Okay. Your design, you need to allow for 5,000 square foot of recreational area. That's going to be dedicated to the municipality. They can put in a park if they want. They can just leave it as vacant ground, whatever they want to do with it. Your detention pond, you need to allow for 4,000 square feet. You don't need to design anything. You just need to reserve a spot for it. But it does need to be in a logical location. We already talked. You need to allow for post-construction stormwater management. Those are the BMPs that we talked about with the PABMP manual. You're going to pick 2, one structural, one non-structural, and you're going to label that somehow on the drawing. This is what we're using. Okay. Property lines need to be shown. We'll talk about that. Okay. Property line labels. So you need to label the meets and bounds. The bearings and distances. I'll show you how to do that. Each lot is going to have a lot area, and you need to double check and make sure that that lot area satisfies the ordinance. Okay. You can either label it on each lot, or you can make a table. Put the table on the wall. Your choice. You dimension the center line of your roadway. Building restriction lines need to be shown. We'll take a look at that. Roadway widths and curbs, that needs to be shown. Sidewalks, street trees, you're going to come up with a generic house footprint. It's up to you how big your house needs to be. But the house needs to be within the building restriction line or the building line. Driveways. Can driveways be inside of building restriction lines? That's a little. They can be inside yards. How close do you think is a good distance to stay away from the property line with your driveway? Think putting it right on the property line is a good idea? 6 feet, 10 feet. I like those numbers. I wouldn't go any smaller than 2 feet. I wouldn't go any less than 2. That allows you to, if you want to, you can have the driveway go right up to the front of the house and the garage doors are front facing. Or you can have the driveway go around the side of the house and the garage doors are on the side. You've all seen that. All you got to do is come up with a generic layout and show. Okay. No report required, it's only a plan. Okay. We talked about blocks, we talked about legends. Some groups did not follow the naming convention that I have down at the end here. I do want you to follow the naming convention. And I'm specifying, and this is due Wednesday before class. PDF file and cap. Again, some groups didn't provide the PDF file, which, okay. I realize it's brave. Okay. If you choose not to work on it at all, next Tuesday, there's a lab the following Tuesday, but it's due the next day. I may or may not be as available as I was for this past one. Okay, so keep that in mind. Questions about any of this? Okay. I should have done this at the beginning, but the 29th, so not next week, but the Monday that we get back, the 29th to the 10th is when course evaluations open. I'm thinking about doing it on the 29th when we get back. Is there anybody, now I don't want you to raise your hand, I want you to send me an email, because I don't want to be calling anybody out on this. Okay. If you do not have a means or method to take the course evaluation online, whether it's with your phone, your laptop, whatever, Chromebook, if you don't have something like that, shoot me an email, let me know. Okay, because you can do it on your phone, you can do it on a laptop. We're going to set class time aside to do this. Is there any opposition to that? All right. So if you don't have a way to do it here in the classroom, then maybe you can go to one of the computer labs. All right, so let's get right into the semester project. So I gave you all a paper copy so that you can use a pencil. In ES 101, Did you guys learn how to read an engineering scale and lay it down and kind of scale things off of a plan? Okay, so those drawings that I handed out, every inch on that drawing is equal to 50 feet horizontal. So it is a scaled drawing. You can sit there either with an engineering scale or a ruler and scale things off and kind of sketch it, right? To get you an idea of what you're thinking you might want. Just do it with a pencil that you can erase and, you know, sketch lightly and then erase, you know, until you refine it to the way you want it. The PDF file of that document is up under the Google Drive under Semester Project. There's a lot of information there for you. Let's start looking at some of this. All right, I gave you a bunch of stuff, okay, on the Google Drive. One of the things that I gave you is this base drawing, this survey base drawing. Okay, I'm going to open this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own X reference. Okay, I'm just going to tell it to attach the pay information. Anybody remember what X references are? They're kind of like building blocks, Lego blocks, if you will. So I'm going to do a save as of this. And I'm going to put it where I'm going to be working. All right, so I'm going to do it under semester project background files. And I'm going to call mine XREF site me and Professor Almeida. So that's what I'm going to call this drawing. Okay. All I did was a save it. I also gave you the CAD files of this. Okay. So let's talk about how X references work. You can have multiple people working on a project at the same time. Like you could be working on the existing features plan, you could be working on the grading, you can be working on the utilities, because all these things are separate drawing files. There's an XREF site, an XREF utility, an XREF grading, an XREF, all of it. Okay. So we're making a site drawing that's going to have all of our lot lines and roads and all of the stuff for our subdivision. Come up with a name for your subdivision. You know, you've all seen names for Whispering Pines development. Let's rip all the trees out and name the roads after. Okay. Back to, okay, so I just created the drawing. Now, what I'm going to do is type XREF, and it brings you into this dialog box. This center screen here tells you everything that's loaded into the drawing. Right now, this drawing doesn't have anything, right? So, right now, I'm on layer 0. I'm going to put my X references on layer GX reference, general X reference. Okay. Whatever layer you put it on, if you freeze that layer, the whole XREF disappears. Okay. So if you type XREF, right click on, you go into this middle block here, this big gray area, right click and go to attach drawing. Now, remember that you are going to be working on some local drive. If you try and do this off of Google Drive, it may or may not be a happy camper. I can guarantee you if you're working off of an external, a flash drive, a local drive, that tends to work the best. Okay. So I'm just going to navigate to where I have, so you're going to download this stuff from the Google Drive. So there's, on the Google Drive, there's under semester project, there's X references that are there. There's an XREF survey, right? There's an XREF topo. So the survey is the existing features plan. So I'm going to hit open and it'll think for a moment. Be patient with it. It's asking you where to place it. Make sure it's an overlay. You're going to place it with a scale of 1, right? You don't want to scale this thing up or down, right? The scale should just be 1 and the base point should be 0, right? So you hit OK, and it'll think for a minute. If you had any of those boxes checked off, it's going to ask you down on the command line, okay, what scale do you want? What rotation do you want? What base point do you want? I didn't have any of those indication boxes checked, so it just dropped it in for me. You see how I put it in the drawing already? If I close this, you're like, no, it's not. It's nowhere to be seen. Zoom, enter, extends. Ta-da. So here's the survey room. There's some working stuff down here in the corner. You're going to have some of that as you work. So you see how this blue line here is my boundary. That's the total outbound for this development. It's kind of like the limits of what you own to do the development. Okay. You can turn everything off except for that layer if you want. And you remember the topo that I gave you? That's another building. So if you're just looking at this conceptually, right? If you go in here and type XREF again, come up to this upper dialog box. Don't select anything, just have the pointer or the mouse on a gray area and right click. Go to attach drawing, now attach the topo. It'll bring up the same dialog box, you tell it okay. 0, 0, 0, no rotation. Wow. Put it in right over the top. What are the orange lines? Soil types. Oh, okay. If you ever want to know what something is, but you're not sure, type X list. If it's an X reference, XREF survey is the drawing that it lives in, X soils. So it's the soil type. Okay. All right, so then you can have that loaded and look at the contours and look at conceptual things. If you type XREF at any given point in time that you're working, you can unload those. You can turn things on and off as you need to see things. Okay. So I'm going to turn them back on, but I'm only going to turn on my start. So you right click on it, hit reload, and it brings it back up. Now, don't forget, you got to relocate this gasket somehow, somewhat. But the outbound is what I'm mainly interested in, right? So what I can do is I can sort this drawing. If I bring up the layer manager down here under X references, if I select this, this is everything that's under the survey layer. Okay. So if I go over here and I right click and I select everything and turn everything off, see this property boundary? The property boundary. Let's try C property boundary. There it is, C property boundary. That's my outbound for the developer. Kind of hard to see. Let me change the color. That better? Dark blue on black really wasn't working. So that's the perimeter. Okay. So some commands that are going to help you lay out your subdivision. Okay. Right now, if I grab this, it sees this as one object. Right? It sees that as an X reference. It's like me handing you my book bag, not the pen that's inside the book bag. You want the pen, right? You want one of those lines. You don't want the whole book bag. Okay, so how do you do that? You do that by using construction lines. So your subdivision, right, you can do on one of these layers, C property line, okay, or C property lots. What do we want to draw on? Property line or lots? Anybody here? Lots. Lots. So, all right. So this is the layer I'm going to work on, right? Set current. Turn it on. Set. Aha, because it's the X reference, right? All. So if I go to see how each drawing has the same layers, right? I was in the X reference and I tried to make that the current layer. You can't make it an X reference the layer, right? It has to be in the drawing itself. Okay, so C property lots is the one I'm selecting. So set it current. Okay. Now let's say, okay, everybody remember they had issues with drawing stuff as lines and then polylines, stuff wasn't joining. If you draw stuff as polylines, you should be fine. Okay. So I'm going to do a polyline. And I'm going to go from this end point of the property. Ooh, something to take note of. Right? This property line is not one continuous segment. There's like 3 segments in there, right? All right, let's say I want my lots to be, how deep do you want your lot? 100 feet, 200 feet? 180, okay. Now remember, instead of like playing bingo and just throwing out a number, take a look at the ordinance. What's the minimum lot size? What's the minimum lot depth? What's the minimum lot width? Put a little bit of engineering to it, right? But to get the line, right, all you have to do is an offset. So type offset. You tell it the distance that you want first, 180 feet. If you're watching the command line, that is telling you the information that it wants. Just watch that command line. Select the object to offset. Select that. There it is. So I'm thinking about maybe putting some lots in there. Okay. If I do this, wouldn't my road be over here someplace? Okay, well, the road, does anybody remember what the right-of-way width was? Come on, I know it's Friday, but 60 feet, right? Yeah. Nope, 50. So half of it is 25, right? 50 is 25. So that would be the center line of my road. Okay. Your property lines, you want to be perpendicular to your road. So does your road have to be parallel to this? Not necessarily. Like it could be slightly off so long as you're meeting your minimum requirements for depth and width. But your property lines, you want to be perpendicular to the right-of-way of the road. So how do I make that happen? With your O-snaps. So type polyline. I want to start from someplace down here. Notice I'm not up against the property line yet. I'm gonna go perpendicular to my street. Now, keep in mind, you're gonna double check what your lot area, lot width, what those standards are. Don't just do 180 because that's what I did in the video. I just swagged it. Anybody know what a swag is? You're engineers, you should really know what a swag is. Scientific wild ass guess. Okay. All right, now you have what your lot width is going to be. Let's say my lot width, I design it at 100 feet. So now I'm going to do an offset of 100 feet, and I'm going to lay out 3 or 4 lots. Right? Is this a really good design?
No,
Why not?
you're right. I just, it doesn't.
You got some extra space you can't really use.
Got a lot of extra space, right? Is this a really good design for the client's point? Not at all. Right, I got a lot of wasted space. It just looks weird, right?
So could you like bend the road around this?
You absolutely can bend the road. That's why you have roads with curves,
Oh my God.
right? So I'm not trying to be a smartass, but that's why you have curves, right? Okay, so, all right, I made my lines perpendicular to my road right. Now, I want to extend, spell the word out, to that line. So select your boundary edge, that, and then I'm going to select the things that I want to extend to. So again, just watch what the command line is saying. Okay. Everybody okay with how I got to where I'm at? Nico.
I'm okay with it, but like, doesn't that make it lots bigger than they actually need to be?
Yeah, I'm just demonstrating this for techniques of CAD.
Oh, okay.
You're not going to do 180-foot lots. You're not. This is me showing you a really poor design, but how to use CAD.
Gotcha.
You with me?
That makes
You're
sense.
going to come up with a much better design using the same techniques.
So are we trying to fit as many lots as we can or is this a realistic neighborhood? Just like, obviously not every lot, not every neighborhood meets the minimum lot sizes.
You're the engineer.
Okay.
You have to balance satisfying your client with being able to recognize, okay, I've done everything that I can do to satisfy the code of ethics and sustainability. Okay.
I have another question. Okay. So when it comes to like the code of ethics, does that actually hold any like legal like responsibility, or will I just like not be able to like sleep at night? I don't like follow. I'm like still confused by it. Like,
The ASC has a.
Just
So
what-
the code's language is what you have.
So
The code's language is what you have. This isn't a humanities class.
okay.
This is for you to decide what you can sleep with at night, because you're meeting the ordinance. You're following the PABMP manual. You're putting in post-construction stormwater practices. It's up to you whether or not you're gonna pack as many lots in there as you can as possible,
What if like?
because that's the dilemma you face almost every day.
But what like the ordinance like want to incorporate like the ACSC like that?
And that's why they have preliminary reviews and final reviews, and they're going to critique this and go, well, why don't you do this instead?
Gotcha.
You mean they don't have a bunch of assassins that have to
No.
thing?
not more.
That'd be cool.
So there's
Okay,
like there is
so
like
let's get back to what you need to do your drawings. Okay. All right, so I want to put a road in up here someplace. Right? Say this is the center line of my street. How do I resolve this? Curve. What was my minimum curve?
200.
200. You can do it 2 ways. You can do it with a radius, or you can do it with a circle that's tangent to 2 lines. I'm going to show you both. You can choose how you're going to do it. If you type circle, again, pay attention to the command line. TTR. What does TTR stand for? So what does that mean? If you hit T, you're drawing a curve tangent, tangent with a radius. You select your first tangent line, your second tangent line, and then you tell it the radius. Ta-da, I drew a curve. I don't want a whole circle. Okay, neither do I. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this part of the curve so everybody sees how my two tangents go beyond the curve. Now I'm going to trim things. So trim, select them. Right, so you just select the things that you want to cut back. See how I've cut it back for me? Okay, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is a fillet, a partial radius. Okay, so what is it asking you? It's asking you for the first object, but it's telling you if you select your first object and second object, what radius is it going to give you? A 5-foot radius. How would you like to drive around a curve that has a 5-foot radius? I drive a truck that would not make a 5-foot radius. Okay. So type R for radius, tell it the radius, select the first object, second object. Ta-da, you've got a curve. Make sense? Am I going too quick? Okay. Now you've kind of got a center line laid out. All right, let me do this. And perpendicular. Perpendicular. I might meet my 75, I might not. Up to you to check. Okay. But this is one center line on the road, and this is another road. Okay, everybody follow? So I'm gonna do my offsets, 25 feet. Oops. So there's my road. You need to go back and look at the cross section. How wide is it from curb to curb? I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna say it's 30 feet. I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You gotta look at the cross section. It's up there. It's on Google. 15. Offset, offset. Okay, how wide is a curb? 8 inches. How is that in feet? 0.67. So I'm gonna do a 0.67 offset. There's my curb. Now, the sidewalk, right, is 1 foot in from here. And I believe it was 4 feet, right? Okay. So now I can go in and change some things. So see site curb, right? I'm going to make that my current layer. Okay, so that's my curb layer, right? I want to match the properties of that. So I want this and this, right, to be on this layer. Everybody see what I just did? Is that raising a hand or is that? Okay, no, just making sure I'm not missing a question. So these are my curbs, right? Let's go up and find our sidewalk. So see site walk. I'm gonna make that my current layer. And I'm just gonna draw a temporary line out here. And I'm gonna match properties. Of this and this, that, okay? Now, where the streets intersect, what do I do? Can I have it square? No, I have to have a radius of some sort, don't I? Right? So everybody seeing why you really don't want to wait till the last minute to do this? What do we think the radius should be? What's the correct answer? Check the ordinance. For your intersection radiuses, check the ordinance. I'm gonna say that it's 25 feet. So I'm gonna go with a radius of 25. Right, and then I can. So it made a combined line. So I'm just gonna offset that my 0.67. Everybody seeing what I'm doing?
It's so real.
The layers are hard to see. Okay, let's do this then. Let's change this to green and somebody give me another color.
Blue,
Purple,
violet,
Green.
yellow.
It's
lavender.
Oh.
See that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. What about building restriction lines? Everybody follow what I did with the curves? Just offsetting, extending, putting stuff on layers, right? Fun with that, right? Okay. What about building restriction lines? It's just offsets, right? So if your front building restriction line is 50 feet, you offset that 50, and your rear building restriction line is, I don't know, 40 feet, and your sides are 10 and 10. Right? So this is your BRL. I'm going to set that current. And I'm going to make all of these that layer. Then you can go through and trim whoops, not that one. Undo works for any command. So I trimmed what I didn't want, you just undo it. So then I can lay my house out. I'm probably gonna put my house maybe a foot off of or right on that front building restriction line. Then I'm gonna lay my driveway out. Everybody see how you're not gonna wanna waste time and do this the night before. This is a semester project. You've got no other homework. On the, Chris. You can do it for one and then copy it to the other ones. Right? Or for the building restriction lines, you could draw it. Now, I gave you under Google Drive, I gave you examples of subdivision plans. There's my house, there's my driveway, there's my lot area. You're not gonna have a street address. That's the street address. Does your building need to look all fancy with the roof lines like mine does? No, it can be a rectangle. Or a square, right? See how this one does not have the sidewalk shown? I want you to show sidewalks. I want you to show street trees. I don't want you to show like the street signs and stuff like that. Everybody see how you can do your lot labeling right on the lot? Or you can do it with a table. See how this one has tables? Because the lots are much, much smaller. Okay? These are all just examples that you can look at as far as so you don't need to show the internal layout of your building. All you need to show is the building and that it fits in your building restriction. Again, this one labels the lot right on the lot. You can do a table. This one, the sidewalk is drawn and hatched. I want you to draw the sidewalk. Do I want you to hatch the sidewalk? You're doing the drafting and engineering. Do a drawing that looks good. You've got enough that you can get going with this. Right? You've got enough that I wouldn't waste time. Okay? You are going to want to name your roads. Okay? And I'm going to show you on Monday how to label your property lines and how to label your lot areas. That's actually a lot easier than what you think it might be. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? If you do not have access to some digital means to do the course evaluations on the 29th, please send me an email. You don't have to raise your hand now and let me know, but I would like to know because I'd like everybody